Situation that we're about to talk about now raised a lot of eyebrows. A Los Angeles bound flight had to make an emergency landing. This happened Monday after its pilots lost a radio link with flight staff, and it prompted them to have to bang on the locked cockpit door and raising fears that someone was trying to break in. We want to bring in Hank Kwiatkowski, an aviation expert, CEO and owner of the Contour Aviation Group, LLC. Thank you so much for your time today.
Good to be with you.
Let's talk about this. When I say that the pilots lost a radio link with flight staff, explain to those who are watching right now exactly what that means.
Okay, so when you're sitting in an airplane, I'm sure you've seen flight attendants pick up a telephone or a handset near their workstations, and they're typically communicating with the pilot or the flight attendants on the other side of the airplane. That's a common, really important communication device within the aircraft. So the pilots need to be able to talk to the flight attendants at various times on any given flight, and that's the system they use. So you think of it kind of like an intercom within an office.
So this flight took off from Omaha, Nebraska. Within 36 minutes, it was back at the airfield where it left from. Talk about the breakdown. What is the communication breakdown in this situation?
Well, my understanding from everything I've read, and it's all mostly, in the public, but it seems consistent. So the pilots were unable to talk with the flight attendants. There seemed to be a problem with the interphone system itself. So now you've got a situation where the pilots cannot communicate with the flight attendants in the back of the airplane, and somebody's banging on the door. Now, that door is pretty heavy. You can't really hear anything through it. So they had no idea what was going on. This was shortly after takeoff. So you've got a situation where they couldn't even talk to the flight attendants because of this problem to ascertain what was going on in the cabin of the airplane. And somebody's banging on the door with, and you would make the assumption they're trying to get into the airplane. So I think the captain made a very wise move to just stop where they're at, land the airplane, and ascertain what's going on, and not try to handle it in the airborne situation.
Hank, when I think about, not being able to have conversation with, the pilot, you can't talk back to the flight attendant. You don't know if turbulence is coming up. You don't know if someone is sick in the cabin, for example. Is there a backup system on a plane in case something like this happens? Or is this the only option is for that pilot to then turn around?
Well, it's the primary option. Every airline has their own procedures if that system goes down. I'll be honest with you, this is the first time in 40 years of airline flying I've ever heard of a situation like this. I've read that maybe somebody left a switch on or left the communication line open. So the key issue is, as you said, it's important. If you're coming up in an area of turbulence, you need to talk to the flight attendants to secure the cabin and the galleys before you hit the turbulence. So it's really an important safety device. Keep in mind, this airplane had 3.5 hours of flying left. So you don't want to proceed on a flight that long with that inability to actually talk to your flight attendants.
I'm reading this. It says doors on passenger jets, which you hinted at, are normally locked during flights and were reinforced according to FAA rules that was introduced after 9/11. However, most commercial planes also have a touchpad through which the flight crew can request access. Can you talk to us about what that touchpad does and what it actually is?
Yeah, so, it's kind of like the touchpad to open up your garage door when you're outside. And every airplane's different. I'm not familiar with this particular airplane type, but the Boeing airplanes, which I'm familiar with, that's a standard procedure. But there is also a communication that typically happens along with the use of the touchpad. So anyway, it was a breakdown shortly after takeoff, a lot going on, a lot of uncertainty as to what was going on. The captain made a very good decision.
Is there ever a situation outside of this where, I know in this particular case, this radio link was lost, but is there ever a situation on a plane where in some cases the pilot can't talk to the crew, the cabin crew specifically?
Well, normally not. I mean, you could use, the pilot can also get on the public address system as he talks to the passengers, and that's an alternate form of communicating with the flight attendants. But that gets broadcast across the whole aircraft, so that's not something you would normally use.
Let's talk about, overall, Hank, it seems like we're talking about, I don't know if it's because of social media, but it seems like we're talking about cases involving airplanes more frequently, especially making headlines. What do you make of that? Is it because of social media? Is it that so much is going wrong that we're learning about? I think there's probably more going wrong than we know in some cases, but do you think that is the reason why aviation in general is making headlines so much?
Yeah, I believe fully it's social media and the amount of blogging that's going on. There's websites out there that try to capture everything that's happening that gets posted online. So, yeah, I think that really accentuates it. I can tell you, at my former airline, I actually ran the operations control center. Things went on every single day. So the amount of things going on in the system right now does not feel unusually high compared to what I experienced 20 years ago.
So you think the rise of social media has made it seem like it's worse than it actually is right now?
Well, I do. And, there are more flights and there are more people flying than ever before. So that also amps up the possibility of more incidents, so to speak.
Got it. Any other expertise or anything else you'd like to add, Hank?
Well, no, other than I think it is important for the government shutdown to end quickly so our air traffic controllers can be properly compensated and they can take their mind off of that and keep it where it needs to be, keeping the sky safe.
Yeah, because that is such, I know someone that does that job. That is such a grueling job to begin with. And then to now have it over your head if when and how you're going to be paid, especially if you have bills, you're an adult, that is a lot on your brain at the same time, keeping your eyes on the airspace at all times when you're on the job. Can you talk about the importance of the air traffic controller? Maybe some people don't really get it.
Well, it's an absolute critical job. And I actually was head of air traffic control in the United States for about 4 years. It is a grueling job. It is absolutely intense. You stay focused all the time you're on duty, and you can't lose that focus. So when you get done with a day shift being an air traffic controller, you've worked hard.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've heard from the person that I know that does that for a living. Hank Krakowski, you have been an absolute pleasure to talk with, very knowledgeable. We thank you so much for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll have you on again. Maybe the next time, something positive we'll be talking about, although this did have a positive outcome.
It did.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time.